Shan Carter is gone, not benched, not suspended for optics, but effectively removed from the professional conversation in one decisive league stroke. The WNBA did not merely discipline her. They delivered a message, and they delivered it with the kind of clarity usually reserved for constitutional amendments. One shove to Caitlin Clark, 6 seconds of impulse, erased 6 years of carefully accumulated credibility. No warning memo, no extended hearing tour, no dramatic appeals tour, just a door closing with institutional finality. But anyone treating this as a single-play overreaction is missing the broader political landscape inside the league. Because this was never just about one moment on hardwood under bright arena lights. This was about patterns, reputations, internal files, and conversations that rarely leave executive offices. The shove may have been the headline, but it was not the beginning of the story. That story started years earlier, long before Clark ever hit the floor in Indiana. On the surface, the game itself looked ordinary, a regular season matchup between the Indiana Fever and Chicago Sky. The arena was packed, energy high, ratings strong, and executives quietly thrilled about the league's accelerating growth. Just 2 years ago, this level of mid-season attention would have sounded optimistic, maybe even aspirational. Now it was reality, and with reality comes stakes. Caitlin Clark was doing what she does best, orchestrating offense with audacity and range that stretches defensive patience. Deep threes, sharp passes, tempo control, she was dictating the night with rookie composure. Chicago was not just trailing, they were visibly unraveling possession by possession. Defensive rotations lagged, shoulders slumped, frustration crept into movements that had started crisp. On nights with national attention, frustration hits differently because everyone is watching. And then Chennedy Carter made a decision. There was no loose ball, no contested shot, no scramble requiring split-second misjudgment. She walked behind Clark and delivered a forceful shove completely detached from the play. Clark crashed to the hardwood, and the arena inhaled in unison. It was not the roar after a hard foul, it was the stunned quiet of collective disbelief. Even the referee's whistles felt delayed, as if time itself needed clarification. Replays followed from every angle, and none of them softened the optics. Slow motion made it clearer, not murkier. There was no basketball explanation available to rescue the action. Analysts courtside, veterans of heated rivalries and playoff brawls, described it as unnecessary. Not hard, not competitive, not intense, simply unnecessary. Carter did not check on Clark, did not extend a hand, did not offer visible acknowledgement. She walked away as if the shove belonged to routine physical play. Clark stood up, dusted herself off, and resumed competing. That contrast, subtle in real time, would later become symbolic. The game finished, the score recorded, but the real aftermath had already begun. League officials had seen the footage, and unlike fans, they watch with institutional memory. When the WNBA released its official statement, the wording was precise and unusually direct. Carter's actions were described as deliberate and inconsistent with the league's values. That phrasing was not accidental, it was strategic. The announced penalty was an indefinite suspension with conditions for reinstatement. At first glance, that sounds procedural, almost merciful. But within league circles, it read differently. Multiple sources indicated the reinstatement conditions were crafted to be extraordinarily demanding. This was not a simple cooling-off period with a predictable return date. It was discipline engineered to endure. Over 500 hours of community service were required. That number alone represents months of structured obligation. Add extensive behavioral evaluations without a defined timeline. Include a probationary period restricting earnings and movement even upon hypothetical reinstatement. Structurally, it resembled a ban without the legal vulnerability of calling it one. In effect, the league closed the door while leaving it technically unlocked. The financial consequences moved quickly, because in professional sports, money reacts faster than press conferences. First came the lost contract salary, guaranteed income that simply stopped accumulating the moment the suspension began. Then came the endorsements, which did not pause politely but exited with corporate efficiency. Brands that had been in active discussions withdrew within days, citing image alignment and strategic priorities. In today's WNBA, where sponsorship growth finally mirrors audience growth, that matters deeply. For many players, endorsements are not bonuses. They are pillars of financial stability. Estimates place the immediate financial damage above $1 million. Some projections, factoring future contracts and missed extensions, pushed that number significantly higher. In a league where salaries remain modest compared to the NBA, every contract carries amplified weight. The question, quietly circulating, was whether this shove was truly the sole catalyst. Because punishments, this intricate, rarely materialize overnight. They tend to emerge after a file has grown thick with prior concerns. To understand the league's posture, one must revisit 2019 and the Atlanta Dream. Carter entered the league as the 4th overall draft pick, a player with undeniable athletic explosiveness. Her first step was electric, her scoring instincts sharp, her ceiling seemingly expansive. Atlanta saw opportunity, upside, and a future built around dynamic offense. Early excitement, however, gradually gave way to internal friction. A confrontation between Carter and veteran Courtney Williams escalated beyond routine teammate disagreement. That detail matters because Williams is widely regarded as even-tempered and steady. When tension rises with someone known for composure, organizations take notice. Former staff described the episode as more than competitive frustration. They framed it as the kind of conflict that fractures locker room chemistry. Such fractures do not always reach headlines, but they reshape internal evaluations. Carter's tenure in Atlanta ended sooner than initially projected. She moved to Los Angeles, where the Sparks offered a fresh environment and reset narrative. New coaches, new teammates, new city, and theoretically a clean slate. Yet reports emerged of repeated tension during film sessions. Coaches presented tactical corrections, and Carter reportedly interrupted or dismissed them. On more than one occasion, she exited sessions before they concluded. What might have been isolated incidents became recurring themes. The Sparks eventually made a decision rarely seen in a cap-conscious league. They paid approximately $90,000 to release her. In financial terms, that represented a significant portion of their salary cap. Teams do not willingly spend that kind of money without competitive return unless the calculus demands it. The transaction functioned less as a roster move and more as an organizational statement. Carter later joined the Chicago Sky, where expectations of maturity followed. The WNBA has cultivated a culture of player solidarity over decades. Teammates frequently defend one another publicly when discipline is issued. Statements are released, context is offered, and unity is emphasized. After Carter's suspension, that familiar pattern did not materialize. No public endorsements of her character surfaced from Chicago's locker room. No anonymous suggestions that the punishment felt excessive appeared. Instead, there was silence. In a league defined by collective voice, silence speaks clearly. It signals distance without formal accusation. It communicates boundaries without requiring explanation. Angel Reese, who had appeared close to Carter during the season, made her own quiet gesture. Within hours of the incident, she unfollowed Carter across social platforms. No announcement accompanied the action, no commentary framed it, but the timing ensured it would be noticed. In professional sports, social media gestures function like modern press releases, subtle but unmistakable in their intent. Reese did not have to create visible distance so quickly, yet the decision arrived with precision. For observers, it reinforced the perception that internal separation had already begun. In the weeks prior, subtle signs had surfaced across team interactions. Carter's presence was notably absent from certain team bonding posts. Cryptic messages from teammates about respecting roles and honoring the game circulated online. Individually, those posts seemed vague, even harmless. Together, they suggested underlying strain. Locker rooms rarely fracture overnight. They erode gradually. By the time the shove occurred, some insiders believed patience had already thinned. After the game, Carter faced a pivotal opportunity. Press conferences in moments like this serve as unofficial appeals courts. Acknowledgement can soften narratives. Accountability can recalibrate public opinion. 30 seconds of direct remorse can change trajectories. Carter entered the room with crossed arms and visible frustration. When asked about the shove, she redirected focus to the next opponent. She described the incident as over, emphasizing that it was just basketball. When pressed further, she stated she had no regrets about not addressing it sooner. The tone did not signal reflection. For league executives monitoring closely, that moment mattered. The issue was no longer only the shove itself. It was the apparent absence of recognition regarding its impact. Growth in professional environments depends on acknowledgement. Without it, trust becomes difficult to rebuild. Media veterans present later described the press conference as decisive. One noted it felt like watching a career pivot in real time. Shortly thereafter, the league formalized its decision. The WNBA's broader context cannot be ignored in this calculation. Viewership had risen dramatically year over year. Merchandise sales reached record highs. Caitlin Clark's arrival contributed significantly to that surge. The league was navigating unprecedented attention. With that attention comes scrutiny. When discipline intersects with growth, optics intensify. Clark's response contrasted sharply with Carter's. Despite national coverage and physical provocation, she avoided escalating rhetoric. In interviews, she redirected conversations toward team objectives. She emphasized improvement, preparation, and focus. That posture resonated with fans and executives alike. A former WNBA All-Star publicly praised her composure under pressure. Leadership, they suggested, often reveals itself in adversity. The juxtaposition became unavoidable. One player absorbed the moment and refocused on competition. The other appeared resistant to framing the moment as significant. For a league crafting its public identity, that contrast carried weight. The disciplinary message therefore extended beyond Carter. It communicated expectations to every roster. Talent opens doors, but professionalism determines longevity. The league chose which narrative it preferred to amplify. Beyond the immediate suspension, the question shifted to what options realistically remain for Carter's professional future. Historically, international leagues have offered redemption arcs for American players seeking resets. Europe, in particular, has long recruited WNBA talent eager for additional minutes and income. 5 years ago, pure ability might have outweighed reputational complications. That marketplace has evolved. International clubs increasingly prioritize chemistry, stability, and brand alignment alongside scoring averages. An agent representing multiple overseas teams described the shift as intentional and firm. Talent alone, they explained, no longer guarantees opportunity. For Carter, the combination of factors complicates negotiations. A highly publicized suspension now defines her most recent headline. Documented friction across multiple organizations appears in search results. The press conference response circulated widely beyond sports media. These elements form a narrative difficult to compartmentalize. Endorsement deals that once seemed imminent dissolved rapidly. Marketing departments tend to prefer predictability. Public controversy, even brief, introduces uncertainty brands avoid. When analysts project long-term losses, estimates stretch toward $4 million or more. That figure reflects contracts not signed and partnerships never realized. Carter is 25 years old, squarely within athletic prime. Her physical tools remain evident and measurable. What intervened was not injury or declining performance. It was decision-making and its cascading consequences. Choices in professional sports compound faster than statistics. They accumulate in organizational memory. They influence contract negotiations and locker room invitations. Meanwhile, Clark's trajectory continues upward within the league's expanding spotlight. Ratings climb, arenas fill, and national conversations broaden. The WNBA stands at a growth inflection point. Protecting that momentum has become strategic priority. When officials evaluated Carter's case, they weighed more than a single play. They considered precedent. They considered public perception. They considered internal culture. In political terms, they enforced a boundary to define the institution. That boundary was not subtle. It informed every player that conduct carries cumulative impact. Carter's story will likely circulate in future team meetings, not as a tale of one shove, but as a study in trajectory. Coaches will reference accountability. Executives will reference professionalism. Teammates will reference trust. The league will reference growth. None of those references erase Carter's talent. They simply contextualize it within expectation. Whether she reconstructs her career elsewhere remains uncertain. International options may exist, though fewer than in past eras. Reinstatement technically remains possible, though procedurally daunting. Redemption narratives require acknowledgement before opportunity. The WNBA has moved forward, firmly and publicly. The final chapter of Carter's professional journey is unwritten, but the parameters around it are now unmistakably clear.